Good evening. It is Tuesday, April 16th, 6:03 p.m. We're going to get started. GOFFSTOWN Budget Committee. First thing on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we typically, on roll call, we go around and just say our name, but today let's say a couple things about ourselves. There's new members of the committee, and some of us are returning, so Laura, kick it off.
Laura Stevens. What do you want to know?
Just say maybe what you do for work and how long you've been on the committee.
I'm in library admin, and I've been on this committee for an unusual amount of time because I was appointed and then elected. Sure.
Hi, I'm Samantha Kearns. I work for the state of New Hampshire in the Bureau of Family Assistance. I was elected to this committee in 2022. Yeah, thanks.
Hi everyone, Richard Manzo. I've been on this committee, I think I'm coming up on my 5th or 6th year. Outside of here, I'm a business operational consultant. I help small businesses deal with financial struggles. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Allison DeCesare. I work for myself, providing bookkeeping services to small businesses and individuals, and this is my 2nd year on the Budget Committee.
I'm Elizabeth DeBrule. I'm the Director of Education and Public Programs at the New Hampshire Historical Society. I have served two terms on the Budget Committee from 2011 to 2017, and I was chair for 3 of those years. And I did a very short stint as a fill-in member of the Budget Committee in 2020 when we were all Zooming for 6 weeks or something. Very short period of time. Yeah, that's it.
Olivia Welch-Erdahl. I'm a home educator with a background in human and social services. This is my 2nd year on Budget Committee.
Peter Grigorakakis. I'm back on Budget Committee for this year. I served 2017 to 2020, and I am a finance counselor with Southern New Hampshire University.
Frank Hobbs. I was elected in 2022, current vice chair, and I have a little girl who's just about to turn 6.
Hi, I'm Doug Pounds. This is my 2nd of 3 years serving, and I'm an electrical engineer.
Richard Fletcher. I'm serving from the Goffstown Village Water Precinct. I was elected commissioner there in '97, and I've been on the Budget Committee ever since. And I've served the town of Goffstown as a fire chief for 22 years and with the call firefighters 39 years and all.
Jared Talbot, school board rep. This is my 6th year on the Budget Committee. A little bit about me. Work multiple things. I work as a consultant or a contractor in the defense field, as well as a lecturer at the University of New Hampshire.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelly Boyer, Select Board Rep to the Budget Committee. A couple of years on and off as the Selectmen's Rep, and then served on the Budget Committee prior to that. And in my full-time job, I'm active duty with the New Hampshire Army National Guard.
My name is Brian Mazer. Good evening. This is my 2nd year out of a 3-year term, and then what I do for work, I'm in channel sales for a small software vendor in Europe.
Hello, I'm Israel Carey. First day.
Rookie.
Welcome.
I'm a construction and operations manager for a telecommunications company.
Awesome. And I'm Joe Alexander. This will be my 7th year on the committee.
I know him.
Happy to be back. So with that, we're going to go into the RSA of what's required of us. So we're going to start with election of chair, and then after vice chair, and then we're going to review committee rules and procedures. If you need time to bring that up, that's okay. You should have gotten them emailed to you. I don't think we don't have paper copies here, so it might be something where you have to look at your phone or something to pull it up if needed. And then review the budget timelines that we have drafted up and talk about that. and then we'll get an update from the school and town side. So with that, we're going to move into election of chair. I'll entertain nominations for chairman. Brian?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Joe Alexander for chair again this year.
Okay, nomination of Joe Alexander. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Richard Fletcher. I'll accept that nomination. Is there another nomination for chairman?
I'd like to nominate Laura Stevens for chair.
Nomination for Laura Stevens for chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Olivia Welcher et al. Okay, so with that, do we want to go into, do you want to?
Like a spiel?
Yeah, sure. So why don't you go ahead?
I think it's kind of funny, the Robert's Rules of Order proceedings. A lot of the times at these meetings, they're very, there's something that everybody knows is going to happen, but they still have to put it up to a vote. And then sometimes somebody won't be listening and they'll be like, well, what did you say? What did you say again? And they're like, can we proceed on to the budget? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, no, yeah, everybody's fine with that. Shut up.
A campaign. Thank you, Richard. I have learned a lot on the time I've been here so far. I like some rules. I like to know them. I like to follow them. I like to keep things fair when all possible and hear everybody. And I think I could keep a tight meeting and stay organized and run things well. And that would be true no matter who were on the committee or who the vice chair would be.
I think, I'm not sure if it's the same person, but I believe I recognize her from a town meeting. And she was very vigilant with the point of order proceedings. They're operating off of what's called Robert's Rules of Order, which is used in a lot of local governments and as also a lot of like CEO boards too for like private companies. And point of order is something you say when the official rules of how these meetings are supposed to operate have been potentially violated, and you're trying to point it out. Knowing those rules of order and knowing when there are violations can be very useful and very strategic sometimes, because sometimes people just kind of casually don't fully obey all of the rules. You can kind of hear this too. Union organizers will sometimes say, if you really want to slow down a company without having to go on strike, you can just follow all of the rules, because there's all these arcane, esoteric rules where if you actually followed them all, the process of work would be basically impossible. There's a similar sort of a strategic thing where if you're a Republican, let's say, and you want to slow down the Democrats, you can learn the rules of order really, really well. And every time they go to talk, be like, you're talking out of turn, or vice versa. I'm not sure how I feel about that kind of approach yet, but I do know that if this is the girl I think it is, I recognize her from a town meeting as being somebody who's very capable with those rules, very good at pointing those rules out.
Yeah, so I've served 2 years as chair, one last year and then 2 years before. I've tried to be, regardless of my opinion on things, I've tried to be fair and impartial, make sure that everybody's heard, everybody has a voice and everybody's valid, make sure that we keep discussions centered on budget and not necessarily policy. Like, we're a finance committee, so our job is to really look into the numbers and decide what's important and what's not. So that's kind of our role, so I'd appreciate your support again for chair. Are there any questions? Would you like to go into questions, or that's up to you? That's how they did it last year, but that's okay. Okay, so are we ready to vote, or do we need time? Okay. All those in favor of Laura Stevens for chair, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you. All those in favor of Joe Alexander for chair? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Abstentions? Okay, so 7 to 6 to 2. Jared Talbot and Kelly Boyer abstain. So Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity again. I appreciate it. With that, we're going to go into vice chair. I'll entertain nominees for vice chair.
I nominate Frank Hobbs.
Nomination for Frank Hobbs. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Brian Mazer. Doug Pounds nominates. Are there any other nominations for, well, Frank, do you accept?
I accept.
Okay. Any other nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Richard Manzo.
Okay. Nomination of Richard Manzo for vice chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Olivia Welcher et al. Would you guys both like to say a few words? And we'll go from there?
I'm actually not going to accept that.
You're not going to accept that?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? All right, seeing none, I'm gonna cast a ballot for Frank. So Frank, congratulations.
Thank you. It was a hard-fought campaign.
All right, awesome. So we're gonna move into reviewing the committee rules and procedures. So since we covered all the statutory policies that we had to do today, I
wonder what makes people decide to nominate Richard when he very clearly did not want that position. He abstained from, or decided not to accept that position. That's weird. That's a weird choice. I don't know what made them say he should be chair.
want to go into how we're going to govern ourselves as a committee. So Richard, can you please talk? It's Robert's rules.
Yes.
Typically, we govern ourselves with Robert's rules. I'm not saying I'm an expert with it, but I have a general idea, and if not, Richard is usually quick to call me out on that and let me know if I'm messing up. So I'll just give everybody a minute to pull up the list. I'm going to pull it up myself. So there's a few people that have been on the committee and are returning. There's some that have taken a little bit of time off, so I'll give everybody a second to review this. Couple minutes and then we'll get going.
Question.
Samantha.
Thank you. Am I to assume that this part highlighted in yellow is new? On the second page?
I think you're looking at the RSAs, not the rules of order.
Yeah, the rules of order is it should be a separate attachment.
I looked at I was like 3215.
Yes, 3215 is the RSA, or 32 is the RSA that governs the budget committee. So I encourage everybody to read that if you haven't. That's how we. That's how the state tells us to run run the committee.
This is very worth my time.
Richard.
The highlighted part, just if anyone was curious, is the provision of the RSA that says that a member will cease to hold office if they miss 4 consecutive meetings with an unexcused absence, and that's not new. That's always been the rule.
Go ahead, Laura.
Can we ask a question or?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
this is, we're completely open to amending the rules how needed. Danielle's ready to make some edits if needed, so.
Okay, great,
go ahead.
thank you. I was just wondering, can we put public comment on the agenda?
Yes.
I know we've been open to it, but we just haven't put it on there.
Yes, so that was something that I also wanted to do, so I was going to bring that up, but I think it's important at least to have public comment, even if we're going into deliberations just at the beginning, in case there's something that was said at a meeting before that a member of the public wants to comment on.
Yeah. And I think it's been a little confusing because people haven't seen it on the agenda, so they don't know if
Yes.
it exists.
If it's not on the agenda, I have every intention of having public comment at the beginning of all the meetings. Are we comfortable with the way that we did voting before? I usually just list off who voted in the affirmative, and then if there were any abstentions, and then that's been helpful for the minute taker. I've gotten good feedback on that, so she's really good. So it'll show up in the minutes if you vote. If somebody makes a motion, it's second, and you vote for that motion, if you're on the prevailing side. All votes are recorded. Okay. And I'll say all the names in favor or opposed. So typically we did selection of budget committee representatives to other boards. The only board that we have this year is CIP, right? So it says in the rules of order that I notify the committee of any anticipated opportunities. That's the only one that I anticipate. So if everyone's comfortable with that, you can let me know if you'd like to serve on the board, and then I'll evaluate candidates if there's more of them and choose one. Go ahead.
The first meeting is May 30th. I don't know if the budget committee will be meeting again prior to that.
Likely we won't be.
Last year you did it at the organizational meeting.
Yeah.
But I think when we get to that, I haven't that agenda item.
Yes.
The first CIP.
So the first CIP meeting would be May 30th. Samantha, can you talk a little bit more about your role as budget committee rep?
Yeah, so
Previously.
I forgot to mention when we were doing our little go-around that I was the capital improvements programs representative last year. And so it goes all through the summer. And I think it was normally on...
You got that capital improvement program, CIP. It's the topic of discussion. Okay.
Thursdays. Sometimes it was on Tuesdays. No, was it ever on a Wednesday? Or was it just always Thursday? It's always Thursdays. Not a big deal. Well, I guess it is because you have to go. But it goes all through the summer, and it went from like 5 to 7, and all the town departments came in. They talked about what they have up on the matrix, basically. And the job of the budget committee wasn't necessarily to like shoot things down or be like, it was kind of like, you should maybe like push this back a little bit or like maybe bring this forward on the matrix, and that was kind of the gist of it. It was a lot of fun, but it is like it's a summer commitment.
How often do they meet?
I think it was like every other Thursday, roughly.
The first and third Thursday of every month,
And then in September it was like the first 3 Thursdays all in a row, I want to say. Yeah.
Okay, so is the committee comfortable with the chair appointing somebody based on interest?
Or do we want to, well, but the alternative would be like we vote, right?
We could vote,
Right.
but they missed the
That's what
first.
switched last year.
Yeah, I deferred to vote last year to the
Right,
chair.
it changed to voting. I mean, it changed from voting last year to the chair
Yes.
assigning.
Was there a
Okay with that
reason
still?
we made that switch last year?
So it seems like they're debating. Jesus, I don't even know. So there's a capital improvement project, I guess, CIP, she said. And then that, she, I guess, attends that on Thursdays, apparently. And it appears that they're deciding whether or not they want to be involved with that as a committee. Let's watch more and find out.
No, I mean, historically, it's been the chair that's appointed. I mean, Elizabeth, based on your experience, I mean, when I was elected in 18, 19, 20, it was the chair that usually appointed it, so.
It's not usually a real competitive thing.
Right, it's just usually somebody that wants to spend their summer, right?
It's more like the chair begging people to somebody to step up and do it.
Yes, yeah.
Get out your checkbook, Joe.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we're gonna continue with that.
Okay, yeah, so it's one of the members probably from the budget committee, and I guess there's maybe some amount of accountability involved where maybe they should vote on it, and they're asking if everybody's comfortable with just appointing someone to it, and it sounds like they're comfortable appointing someone to it because it's not a position anybody's like vying for. It's work and maybe presumably not a ton of power, just work and focus and effort.
That then. And then the last thing is emails. So this is typical 91A. Like, as we know, we're a public board, so if there's a meeting of 9 or more of us makes a quorum, we need to notice it and let the public know about it. So any emails, Catherine Fisher, Danielle, they typically BCC us so that we aren't at risk of violating 91A, which is the meeting requirements under state law. So with that, are there any other comments or questions on the rules of order? Laura.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is the right time for this question, but I had it in my notes from last time. So at the hearing, Barbara brought up that we're supposed to answer questions from the public, but I believe specifically at a hearing, not just any meeting. Public comment is public comment, and that's it. And I just wanted clarification on that and to make sure that moving forward we proceed appropriately.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that was a mistake I made last year. Like, we should have really entertained questions of it. It's our budget, so we should be presenting and be comfortable to present our budget. So, you know, if Jared's presenting it, or Kelly, or me, or whoever, we should entertain questions, you're right. So we could put that in the language if you prefer, or we can, it's
I
up
would
to
like
you.
it to be there just for
Yeah.
Sure.
the visual.
I was going to say the same thing. I wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
I think it's important, if as long as it's relevant and germane to the budget, I think citizens and taxpayers should be able to ask questions and should be able to respond. So I think we should include some language in there.
Okay. Elizabeth?
I would just say, I think we should be doing it for public comment in meetings as well. I mean, you don't want meetings to get out of hand, you don't want it to turn into an argument, but if somebody comes with a question, we should answer it, and maybe give them some sense that they have been heard, and that we are considering it further, or what if it's a question we can't answer on the spot. So, I know some boards choose not to do that, but I think it's a mistake.
Okay.
Is there an RSA or something that would keep us from doing that?
There's nothing in RSA 32.
That's a board decision.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be in our rules of order, we put it in.
Then I would agree with that.
So do we want to limit the scope of the questioning? Because I mean, that's something to think about too, right? Like, you don't want to, like, if somebody asks 4 or 5 questions in a row, it takes up like X amount of time in the meeting, and we're answering questions for an hour and a half before the meeting. Kelly?
Just for some insight at the select board, we give everyone their 3 minutes to speak, and if they have questions included that, we usually leave it designation of the chair whether or not to respond in that moment, or kind of start a dialogue, and then if we can direct them to a resource, we usually do that and get email addresses or whatever so we can follow up. So it's kind of just a, depending on the situation sort of thing that we kind of act in the moment.
Okay, that's helpful. So are you comfortable kind of governing ourselves with the same procedure?
It's a little bit weird that there's a conversation happening about this. She's right, that is fairly standard, to my understanding, is that they show up, everybody gets 3 minutes to talk. I don't know what meeting there is where there's no limit on how long a person can talk or ask questions. There's usually a limit, so that was a weird asterisk to put on things. But seems like there's a strong impulse in my local community for public comment and public conversation, which is good, I think.
Peter?
I was just going to ask Kelly, do you guys have that language actually in your rule of order? Like, is that already written in, or has that just been how you've been practicing?
I mean, there is RSA that dictates public comment, which we could share that with the board. I'm looking at Danielle saying yes or no.
It's written into the select board's rules
It
of
is.
procedure.
Yep. I don't know that it says anything specifically about answering questions, but I guess that's just a common courtesy if we're able. Does it? Okay.
It does in the select board.
Can you, Derek, do you mind reading off? Do you have the rules?
I can pull them up.
Because we can motion just to add the select board portion of the rules into our rules that pertain to public comment.
Yeah, it points to the RSAs directly. It talks about the time limits. It talks about keeping things relevant to, no naming names. It pretty much covers kind of all the bases.
I feel like that's already in here. I feel like that's what our public comment says.
It doesn't.
But it doesn't address answering questions.
Well, I guess the public is welcome to address. Address could mean ask questions, right?
That's true. I didn't think of it.
So this is under 2.8 of the select board rules of procedure. Public participation in the board meetings. Each person desiring to speak during public comment shall state his name, street, and if not a GOFFSTOWN resident, his, her town, and shall fill out the roster provided by the town
The
administrator.
usual stuff.
Presiding officer shall schedule appropriate public comment time for the GOFFSTOWN residents at the beginning and end of each regular meeting. The presiding officer, at his, her discretion, may allow other speakers for a germane topic. Public comment speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Agenda appointments with the board may be made for regular meeting.
How has this not already been established?
Unless a concern, so I skipped a little bit about agenda requests. Unless a concern expressed at the public comment period or an agenda appointment is an urgent matter, the board may take up the concern at the next regular meeting under old business.
And then they don't have public comment nor agenda appointments on special meetings.
Okay. So the only thing glaring that I saw was we only need one public comment at the beginning of the meeting. Is there any other things you'd like to scratch, Doug?
I agree with that. I think public comment at the end, I'm not sure, that seemed a little superfluous for our type of meetings. Does that make sense to others?
Yep.
Agreed. Kelly?
The only other thing I could see removing would be the agenda appointments for regular meetings.
Okay.
That's it. I mean, unless you'd like people to make timed appointments to meet with the budget committee where it's more of a dialogue. I can't think of a situation
No.
really where we need that.
No, okay. So other than that, are we comfortable adopting that minus those two items, the end of public comment and the agenda appointments? Okay, I'll entertain a
want a
motion to
second?
do that. No, I'm not motioning. Is there somebody that would like to motion?
So moved.
Moved by Elizabeth, second by,
I'll second.
second by Doug. All those in favor of that change, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, good. So that change has been made. So we'll do public comment at the beginning of every meeting.
And I'll send out the revised rules of procedures right now.
That sounds good. Are there any other edits to the rules of procedures? None? Okay, is there a motion to approve them for this year?
So moved.
Moved by Elizabeth, second by
Second.
Laura. All those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, we're good. Awesome. That went a lot faster than it did last year. I don't know if anybody's ready for that. That was a longer meeting. Okay, so next up we have appointment of CIP rep per the rules. Please let me know, what is today, Tuesday? Please.
I just noticed this is my high school.
Please let me know by the end of this week, Friday-ish, if you're interested in being appointed. And I will send out a notice to the committee on who I decide to appoint. The second thing is, or the next thing is review of budget timelines. So it's another attachment that we've received. This is how typically we've done this in the past, but I want to at least kind of give the committee an update on the timeline of this and solicit any feedback on what worked well last year, maybe what's worked well in the past, and how we can fix that timeline. So just to go over it a little bit, we should be meeting every month to look at spending and budgeting and make sure that we're in line. So those budget reports get sent out to us monthly. Those are something to look at. I try to look through all of them as well. We should be having at least one meeting a month, probably in this. I'm probably going to take like a month off in the summer, but I'm thinking, maybe a May and then a June and then meet up in August or something. But typically we do meetings and tours towards the end of the summer. So that'll be like our quote unquote, like our meetings. Instead of meeting formally, we'll have tours of different facilities later in the summer. Let's see. So then we have in the past had collective meetings with the school board for budget presentations, and then we've gotten kind of the changes that the school board made after the presentation. So we get a presentation by the school board or by the department heads, the principals, and then the school board would deliberate, and then they'd hand us the budget, and we'd recognize what the changes are. Did that seem to work okay last year? I'm comfortable doing it again because it saves the principals from coming in extra to do that presentation once, as long as we get the update on what changes were made. Kelly?
Was there consideration for the town departments to do the same?
We are welcome to consider it if that's something you'd like to.
I just didn't know if you guys had a discussion about that. And I know in the past we've done joint meetings as well. I don't think that's the intention. What was it? Was it you all just were together for the initial presentation?
We did not have a joint meeting with select board, just school board.
Not last year, but in years past. I think
We have before, yes. Yep.
I was just curious what happened. Danielle, you.
Last year, I believe it was the preference of the budget committee, the select board's rep to the budget committee. Peter felt that he wasn't as comfortable with joining because he felt like people couldn't ask some of back and forth questions and have the dialogue. So I think the select board would need to be the one to bring that up.
So the concern was that the budget committee wouldn't be able to ask questions?
Yeah.
Okay, and then was that an issue at the school board presentations? No. Okay, let me chat with them and then maybe I'll bring that recommendation forward if that's okay. We can talk about it at a later time.
Yeah, we can absolutely. So the school board does their workshops and approve the budget later, right, than the select board? Or does the select board send it to us later?
The select board's a little bit later because of our calendar year. One of the attachments on your next item that your budget timelines, it shows when we get our budget put together for review. We get rates and things like that in October, so CBAs are still in negotiation as well. So our budget's finalized usually a little later.
I think that was also part of it because we would get presentations and then take 2 months off and then have to deliberate on. So it wasn't as fresh in our mind as the school side, but I'm happy to entertain it if that's what
Yeah, let
you
me
decide you want to
talk to
try.
the-
But I think it was a timing thing too.
I'll bring it back to them.
Okay, Jared?
Just as a point of order, though we can hear Danielle, I don't think GTV's picking you up for any of your commentary, so I don't think it's being recorded by people. So just FYI.
Is correct.
Elizabeth?
I know in the past, we've always had trouble finding out about the warrant articles, the CIP items, until sometimes the very, very end. Usually that's an issue on the town side, not the school side so much. Is there a schedule on when we should expect to hear about those warrant articles? Or maybe that should go to Kelly and not Derek and Danielle.
Kelly?
Well, yes and no. Are you talking about, I'm assuming you're not talking about zoning or anything like that?
No.
Just
Oh, God,
the
no.
budgetary impacted
Yes.
warrant articles? Yes. I mean, we try to get them as soon as possible, but how many contracts do we have this year? 2?
There's one that's being, so
Thank you.
there's one contract, but there's also, there is a statutory deadline, it's the second Tuesday in January,
So I'm not so worried about the contracts, because I know those are, I mean, you've got a lot of moving pieces and you're trying to get those done. But I'm worried about, I'm talking about any other kind of major project, something that's coming through CIP. I know sometimes you guys wait until the end to decide those, but by waiting so late, it also deprives the budget committee of a chance to really dig into those articles.
Yeah, certainly. I think in years past, we've brought up things that that are in the CIP matrix that might get changed or moved, but typically those projects have been discussed at the budget committee level, so I'll definitely try to be mindful of that, but I don't know that we've had any last-minute additions in the past couple years, but that's certainly something I'll try to keep an eye on.
Okay.
Just overall, so
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Especially when we're going through the departments. Like if we just have a heads up of what you guys are thinking about doing, because it's hard to consider CIP items at the end of everything else. We should be talking about them when we're talking about the departments that they relate to.
Yeah, Elizabeth, sorry, I can't see you, so I'm trying to.
I know.
Yeah, that has been the standard way that we've been doing it, as the departments are bringing them forward when they're making their initial budget presentations. And then things might change if the select board chooses to remove something, or pull something out of the budget into its own separate warrant article. That's happened recently, but for the most part, I can't think of anything specifically that has come like really late in the game other than CBAs.
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, so Kelly will get back to us about select board. Jared, did it work okay timeline-wise for you?
Oh, yeah, it's great. It was right before my hunting season, so perfect for me.
Wonderful.
But no, we distribute at this board's pleasure, and our business administrator and assistant business administrator this year will deliver as needed. Did we actually send the calendar around for the SAU? I thought we did, so we'll be good.
Yep, so I'll let the committee review this, and this is kind of we don't have to approve anything today, but this is kind of the idea of how we want to run this. So if you have any feedback from me or decide, after thinking about it, it might be better to do something else, we can talk about it next meeting as well. Is that okay? Okay. So next up, I'm going to, can both of you give us an update? I know we typically haven't done that in the past, but I feel like we haven't met for a while.
This guy wants to come forward with some
Wonderful.
stuff.
Perfect.
Big surprise.
3 handouts for you if you want to pass them around.
Yep, do you want to talk?
I think what I'll do is, if it's okay, is I'll just take this one.
Yeah, I got an extra one.
All right. All right, this is weird, but I'll do it. So while we're passing this around, I wanted to just give the Budget Committee an overview of some staffing changes at the SAU and also at all of our schools. So at the SAU, in case some of you did not know, I know I shared it with many, but the next school year will be my last in the business administrator role. A gentleman named Doug Totten has been selected to be the assistant business administrator next year, and he will assume the business administrator position in the 25-26 school year. Heather Kelly, who is our staff accountant too, she will assume the assistant business administrator role that Laura Taylor is vacating. Laura worked with me, and Laura is taking a job in the Hopkinton School District as the business administrator. So it's always great when somebody that you work with gets a great opportunity, and Laura's really deserving of that. So as you'll see, we have 2 people in new roles, the SAU. For those of you who have not heard, at Bartlett Elementary School, Principal Jerry Gogan is retiring at the end of this year, and Suzanne Pishka, who is the current principal at Maple Avenue, she will be moving over to Bartlett to assume the principalship as of July 1 of this year.
That is hilarious. That's Mrs. Pishka that used to be the vice principal, and when I was in elementary school, I did a bad thing, and I got called into the office, and the then principal at the time, I think his name was Boyd or something, I forget his name. He called the vice principal, Miss Pishka, that they're referring to, into the office, and they looked at me, and he said to me, "Do you see an M on her forehead?" And I'm like 7 years old, so I have no idea. I don't know any of these boomer jokes. And he's like, "Do you see an M on her forehead?" I'm like, no. And he said, "Then why are you acting like she's a moron?" This traumatic memory.
The current assistant principal, part-time assistant principal, Christine Colburn, she'll be going to Glen Lake as a full-time assistant principal. What the school district is doing is we have a very large number of school administrators that are going to be retiring over the next 3 to 5 years, and we need to do a lot of succession planning. We have a lot of inexperienced assistant principals, or some people who have not even had the job, and we need to groom them for principal jobs. At Maple Avenue School, Suzanne's principalship was vacated with her going over, and the Dean of Students from Mountain View Middle School, Bill Demers, will assume the principal position at Maple Avenue on July 1 of this year. Lisa Johnson will continue as the assistant principal, and Jill Ryu is the Dean of Students. Glen Lake, Kathy Stoyle continues as the principal, and Christine Colburn is the assistant principal. At Mountain View Middle School, Jessica Milligan is still the principal, Brandy Williams the assistant principal, the curriculum coordinator is Josh Lewis, the special ed facilitator is Lindsay Phillips, and the Dean of Students is now an open vacant position because Bill took the principal job at Maple. At Goffstown High School, Frank McBride, principal, Kim McCann, assistant principal, curriculum coordinator is Kurt McDermott, special ed facilitator Callie Rosmack, and guidance director is Joyce Lewis. And last night, the board...
I didn't know Kurt McDermott had that high up of a role. That was my high school English teacher. That was a very, very nice teacher.
School board received the resignations of the athletic director, so that's an open position, and the dean of students is also an open position. So there are certain folks that are taking positions at other school districts and leaving for a variety of reasons, but between those two, which were kind of new to us, and the ones that we know are planned retirements,
We are looking at well over half, if maybe more, 60% of our administrators will be new to the district in the next couple of years. So with that, what you're going to see from a budget perspective is you're going to see, we may see some personnel. We've offered some of our staff at Bartlett and Maple to go to different schools depending upon their salaries. We may see actuals that come in, or you might see your budget for 25, 26. It might look a little bit different because in this case, say Suzanne's salary now went over to Bartlett and Bill's, so it just, you're prepared for that. And depending upon what we see from staff who are interested in moving to a different building, we may see that as well. So I just wanted to give you and the community a heads up with respect to that.
So if I could ask, relative to principals, from what I remember, didn't Glen Lake and Bartlett share a vice principal? And so are we adding?
We repurposed 1.5 positions to add another assistant principal for succession planning purposes. The thought process, and I think this is now open, so I'm not speaking out of school, Suzanne is only going to be in that role for 3 years. So what the school board and the school administration want to do is they want to prep that assistant principal to take over that position. So they repurposed 1.5 positions to make that happen.
1.5, like from where?
Open positions.
It was open positions. I know one was at the high school, and I'm trying to think where the other one was. I can get you that. Kate McGrath, who's our HR director, I know she explained that to the school board. I just don't have my notes.
Yeah, the important thing is we didn't add any FTE headcount. We're keeping a kind of a level head in this, but from a policy standpoint, as we all know, we have to have good leadership at our schools, and this is the best way for us to do it. So keeping a low-level FTEs in place, that we thought that this is the best approach, especially with the pending retirements of several principals that are coming out.
Okay, and just to, is it the board's intention to revert back to the kind of hybrid vice principal model, or is this a permanent position that
we want to
eventually?
We want to see kind of what the delivery is. So whether we keep a hybrid principal between the two schools, or we have to have a full-time assistant principal at Glen Lake, and then have a dean of students or something along those lines. Those will be conversations we have to have in the future.
Okay, thank you. Good, Scott.
Okay, so that was it for the staffing, but again, it has implications. So the other handout that I gave you was the capital reserve fund history. One of the things that I wanted to make sure of is I did hear the word transparency a lot last year, and all years for that matter, and we want to be transparent as a school district as to how these funds are expended. So when the capital reserve fund was voted in, the school board was voted as the agents to expend from that capital reserve fund. I will share with you that last night on April 15th, the school board voted to do 2 projects using capital reserve funds. One of them is the epoxy floor at Mountain View Middle School in the locker rooms. It's so 33 years old, I think. It's peeling, falling apart, and that has to be grinded down, and then the epoxy has to be reapplied. And again, that'll be done over the summertime. And then the other project was the cafeteria tables. They're over 15 years old.
Note to self, capital reserve fund. I'm just gonna write that down as a note. This is what you're probably gonna want to do yourself when you do this without me here, is Google terms like that, capital reserve fund, because that sounds like something that might actually become politicized. That sounds like something that might actually be controversial, or just something that might need to be discussed and debated.
We're at Goffstown High School and then moved over to Mountain View. They are constantly breaking. There are safety issues with them. They're the collapsible variety. Sometimes they don't collapse. Sometimes they collapse when they shouldn't collapse. And we've had issues with seats falling off. We had to re-weld them, and so we're going to replace those. So those are the 2 expenditures. They also have been in the CIP, as well. So we try to stay true to the CIP plan. It is not every single thing gets on the CIP. Sometimes someone forgets or something comes up that's emergent, but we try to do our very best. I think, Jared, what do we have, like 90 to 100 items on CIP, so we try to plan.
She knows.
Samantha, right? We have like 90 to 100. I know we
Yeah,
have a
there's
lot.
like it's its own booklet.
Yeah, so I wanted just at least share that with you.
Okay. Frank?
Scott, quick question. The cafeteria tables, is that a complete replacement or
Yes,
just a
it's
partial
it's a
replacement?
complete
of those that are
replacement of
broken?
22 tables. It also includes the disposal. DPW is not always happy when we show up with debris, so we're trying to make sure that we dispose of them. Yeah. They are good about that generally, but anyway. So the other page that you have are just some other, potential, projects. I will share with you that there are a couple of them that are on here that are rising higher and higher on that list. One of them is the district phone system, which will soon, if it's not already out of support, will soon be out of support. So we have to address that one. And then the other one is the phase 2 of the Mountain View Middle School cistern. This is the fire suppression. It's a tank that is there. About 2 to 3 years ago, we went in and we had to reline it. So we had somebody go in and scrape out the tank and reline it. But there were issues with that particular tank. That's a big project. So those are the two that I think are going to rise to the top. The other ones I don't think are, mission critical. All right. And then lastly, I gave you a memo that the district's been working on a project with a company called Energy Management Consultants. I shared this with you several months ago. There are a variety of projects, well over a dozen, that have been on the CIP, ranging from heating controls to boiler replacements to LED lighting, weatherization, replacement of doors, etc. And we've been working with them for almost a year now, but again, getting much more in depth with this over the last few months. But as I put in the memo, all these items, I think with the exception of some weatherization, have been in the district's capital improvement plan. We just found out that the roof that's above Mountain View Middle School, the seams are, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, but they're falling apart, I guess. They're coming apart. And that roof, it's a membrane type roof, ballasted one, and it needs to be replaced. We're getting leaking in the library, and it's probably the worst place where you can have leaks when it rains heavy. And that we added that roof to the overall project. So you'll see on here that we're looking at a project that has many, many components. The cost is overall cost is a little over $3.3 million. This project has a lot of energy savings components to it, meaning that heating controls, and I want you to think a little bit about, just to give you in very simple terms, a programmable thermostat at your house where it's already preset to go down to 62 at night, and having those types of controls. Right now they are pneumatic type controls. They're not as reliable. We can't access them remotely. So the heating controls will save on energy. The other thing that we're doing at, say, here in GOFFSTOWN High School, we have a lot of older boilers. So we're going to replace all of the boilers with the latest and greatest energy efficient boilers. We're replacing the lighting in almost all of the schools to energy efficient LED lighting. So with the cost of these projects, we are going to be obviously replacing outdated equipment, but we're also going to be seeing a lot of energy savings on both the electricity side, propane, natural gas, oil, etc. So although the total cost of this project with financing will exceed $4 million, what we're expecting is in the high $3 million range of energy savings over a 17-year period. So there's a payback on that. The net new cost to the district is a little over $20,000, meaning that we're going to be having a payment of principal and interest, and it's on the third page, I should say, make it fourth page, and it's really small print, and I'm sorry, this is what the consulting company gave us, but we're going to, and this is not finalized yet, but let's say that we're going to see a payment of about $243,000. What they're telling us is that between energy savings in year one of a little over $125,000, operational savings of about 39,000. Our net new cost will be, about a $20,000, additional cost to the district. So what we plan on doing is, you will see in the budget for next year, a cost for this contract, principal and interest, let's say in that $240,000 range. You'll also see you will see corresponding decreases in propane, electricity at some of our other schools. It will not be a dollar for dollar. So I just want to make that abundantly clear. I don't, having your trust in me and in the school district is the most important thing. I don't want to tell you that you're going to see a corresponding dollar for dollar decrease in electricity and propane and utilities. And the reason being is that we know that we were, 50,000 shy on utilities that were part of that new spending default. So we know we've got to make up for some of that. But in the long term, we're going to have our building.
That's very transparent of him to clarify that, well, there are many ways he believes this program will pay for itself. He's not pretending that it's going to pay for itself completely. That's refreshing. I like that.
Things that are going to be way more energy efficient. The lighting will be demonstrably better than it is right now in all of our classrooms, where we don't have the ability to dim the lights. We have some students who have sensory issues where we have to put up these, they're almost like blue, some people call them diapers, but they cover the fluorescence. So the lighting package will be much better. We'll have better control of our heating, better environment for students to learn in. So those are the nice byproducts of this project, but there is going to be a cost. So you're going to see cost savings in the energy side, but we're also trying to find that new normal of where our electricity should be, where our propane should be. And we're also competing.
I think I missed what he said he was going to do that was going to cause their electricity to be cheaper. I don't think it's a transfer to renewables. I think maybe it was the cistern. Is the cistern energy related? He said something about what they're doing with this project will decrease energy costs, but I don't know how.
About what will the cost per gallon of propane be, because we go out to bid usually 2 years out, and then the same thing on the kilowatts, the cost of the kilowatt hours, which I believe we're trying to land in that 9 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour, which is pretty decent right now. So I wanted to just I have not yet executed any contracts on this, but I wanted to let you know what we've been working on, and what you'll see, and if I could indulge you, is on page number 3. These are the things that are going to be done. So at Bartlett, Goffstown High School, and Maple Avenue, these involve boilers and heating replacements. And what you see in that first column, actually the third column, are operational savings. This would be less maintenance and or less repairs to what we are doing now. Your energy savings is based upon both kilowatt hours, and looking at Doug, because you're the engineer guy, but it's like therms, and it's pretty technical, it's in here. But they're looking at actual decreases in the cost to produce heat and also for electricity. We get rebates from Eversource on a lot of these projects. It'll be about $500,000 in rebates. So when we talk about what's called heating controls, is what I mentioned before, about half the cost of that heating controls project is picked up in a rebate. And that was on, I think it's like the 5th or 6th one down. So for Bartlett, for an example, the cost of the heating controls, which has been in CIP.
This is slightly concerning. They get rebates from Eversource for whatever this project is. Sounds like a company that is, I don't believe at all, environmentally friendly. Eversource, a local, energy provider, which also just jacked up utility rates in New Hampshire by or not in New Hampshire, in Manchester, but I want to say like 44%, I think was their initial proposal. I'll put that in the description, the details of what I'm talking about there. I think it's maybe not boding well for whether or not I would approve of what they're talking about right now, that they're getting rebates from Eversource. But I don't know. This could just be trivial. This could just be normal day-to-day operations of a school. maybe I'm looking for politics, but there isn't any.
For years, about 205,000, 102,000 of that's covered by a rebate. And then you'll see on that same line, we should expect to see about a $9,500 savings in energy savings just from the heating controls, at Bartlett. So I believe that the school board in
Heating controls, that's where the money saved is coming from. Okay. Heating controls. It's got to be some kind of a modern technology that limits the use of the heating during certain parts of the day or something, based on like external weather conditions or something like that, thus saving them wasted money heating when they don't need to. Okay, so that's where the savings of the energy cost is coming from, a heating control system. There we go.
Jared, if you want to speak to it, I think we see it as a win-win in terms of less energy and fixing and updating a lot of our aging equipment.
Yeah, so from a budgetary standpoint, we're knocking off things off of our CIP.
Yeah, I take back my Eversource comment. That sounds very pragmatic, actually.
While reducing the ongoing operations costs that we have from year to year. One of the things that Scott didn't mention that I'm going to remind him to mention is Plaza Sanderson is a company that actually reviewed this.
The law firm did.
The law firm,
and
gave kind of their assessment of it as well. So this has been vetted by an outside source, and we can make that available if we need to for people.
I did include it in the back of the packet.
Okay.
So our school district council they're reviewing all of the contract documents from EMC, all of the financials that we get from the financial company, which we're still trying to pick. We've got 2, I think, that we're choosing from. That legal entity, our legal firm will review those as well.
Are there questions? Elizabeth and then Laura.
I've just a couple of questions real quick. That roof at Mountain View, so I feel like we were talking about that the last time I was on the budget committee. How old is that roof?
11 years old?
Yeah, certain sections have been replaced and patched as we've gone along, so.
It's not that old.
Yeah, that doesn't seem very old to me.
No, it's not.
Last year, as we were touring the building, for those of us that were there, we actually did have a leak in the copy room, if people remember, that were coming down. So this is just one of those things where, hey, it was a patch job at the time, but we actually have the seams that are bubbling and water coming in. And not only that, but it's actually affecting our insulation pieces as well. So it's getting the mold in there, and that means that we have to basically get rid of it as a process.
Okay, and then my second question is, so is this like the successor to the Honeywell?
Yeah, so Honeywell, we have like 4 more years on that particular project. The difference between the Honeywell project and this one is Honeywell took a look at a snapshot in time on costs only. This project is looking at more kilowatt hour savings, because sometimes if you get a really good deal on your electricity or on your propane, your cost may look very attractive, but it wasn't because of the energy efficient, the project. It was because you just did a good job negotiating or getting lucky on commodities or something. This one here actually does take a look at, what are the kilowatt hours saved? What are the therms that are saved in terms of having to produce heat, and making assumptions off of that, what we're going to save in years 1 through 17. And they do build in escalators of 3% for energy costs going up. And also, different variable operational costs going up as well, because every time you have to hire an HVAC person or a repair person, those costs go up at least 3, 4, 5% every year,
Right.
If not more. So they factor that in as well.
And I seem to remember that Honeywell actually did work very well, at least for for a good chunk of time.
It did, and it continues to do so. We'll have a little bit of an overlap. I think we'll have a 4-year, we will not make the first payment on this one until I think July of 2025. We get 1 year of savings, or if not more. But we'll have, I think, 4 years of overlap between Honeywell and this one. So you'll see 2 different payments in there. One will be that for Pinnacle, which is Honeywell, and then I don't know who the financing company is yet. And then in year 4 or 5, there'll only be this one.
How are the payments between the two? Are they comparable?
This one I think is going to end up in the 240 range. The other one, don't quote me on Elizabeth, 180 to 190-ish. Yeah. And that's been going on for, oh boy, 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit longer. This one is, we're looking at 17 years. Honeywell, I think, was 20.
All set, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Laura?
Thank you. Are the rebates issued as checks, or do they come out of payment?
Great.
Are they
That's a great question. The rebates are used as a down payment on the financing, so they get applied upfront to reduce the cost.
Great, thank you.
So I have a few. So when the work is being done, are they guaranteeing, like when these things are fixed, are they guaranteeing like the work for that extended time? I guess I want to make sure
warranty, right, so you want to make sure you don't have another roof issue.
Well, 11 years and then it's year 17 and we got to replace it again.
Well, interestingly, we had a 10-year warranty on that roof. Just for whatever it's worth.
That checks out.
And depending upon what you buy, like
planned obsolescence, but for school roofs, that's concerning. We had a 10-year warranty on that roof, and then the second that 10-year warranty is up, immediately stuff goes wrong. Coincidence?
In terms of what the manufacturer or what the installer will give you, you typically, the more of a warranty, the more you pay.
Sure.
So I'll find out about, but the roof, to quote our facilities director, it was a ballasted roof, which is not the greatest roof because it's a thinner membrane and they put like stone and rocks on top of it. This one will be what do you say, like an adhered membrane, which is much better and much thicker than what the current one is. Again, I'm not a roofer, but that's what Randy had shared with me. Am I right on that?
That's what I recall.
Okay.
So is this project, so the first year it's in the operating, but is it going to be in the default after a while? Like if it's approved this year? I guess I'm wondering because of the concern of the school budget going down and we have like a 17-year
Yeah, so
project
right
where-
now, all of our, what's paying for this will be decreases in utilities. And in some cases, repair lines, and in some cases, maintenance lines. Because if you have a brand-new boiler, you're not going to have to worry about repairs. And some of these new boilers do not require remotely the type of maintenance that you would have. Our current boilers right now at Goffstown High School are both propane and oil. When you have that, you have to, if any of you have like an oil burner, you have to clean that oil burner every single year. But if you had a propane system, you don't have to clean it as much. So in that respect, we anticipate that we'll have lesser cost, and the company has provided us with what they believe will be the operational savings. So I will look through that with Randy and with them to say, okay, how can we lower some of our lines? But as I mentioned, and I want this to be a complete disclosure, and hopefully it gets in the minutes, is that you'll recall that as part of the proposed budget last year, we increased utilities, repairs, and maintenance. So I have to recognize that even though this will be a decrease, it may not be a net decrease. My goal, though, when we talk about default, the default budget is the current year's budget plus or minus any contractual obligations. What I'm looking to do is to look at some other lines, lower those lines, and then put this it's still the default, but it's just in a different line in the budget, okay? So that's what I'm going to be doing over the summer, is saying, okay, if I think we can save $20,000 in this one line, I'm going to move that default number to this, so that it would be part of the default, but it's taking it away from someplace else to making those tough decisions.
Okay.
But it will not be dollar for dollar.
Right.
Please understand that. It can't be. It won't be.
Has the school board chatted at all about using part of the CRF to fund this project?
So I told them that that's an option, because all of the items that are on here, for the most part, with the exception of weatherization, et cetera, are
Right, that's what I was looking at.
the replacement of existing capital assets. So it is in their purview, if they so choose to do that, to fund part of it, using CRF. That's not my call.
Okay, and Jared,
So-
has there been any discussions on that?
Not yet.
We're looking at all
Yeah.
options
Yeah.
that we can to fund
Okay.
this. We think that this is a priority, that's why we're bringing it to this group. Because again, it comes down to, we're replacing aged equipment that's already on our CIP, and we're gonna be able to do that by getting a little over $500,000 in rebates to do it, and then we're gonna be receiving savings on our ongoing costs. So it seems like a win-win-win on this one, but how we're going to fund it is one of those things where, what lines do we have to drop? What things do we have to move? All of those items are on the table for us to consider.
Okay. Any other updates? You all set?
Yeah, so I had one more.
Okay.
And it had to do with, I received questions, I know the school board did, about, okay, the school district has a default budget, what are you gonna do, et cetera. One of the things that we have already made a decision on is that we were looking to go back to 19 school bus routes for the next school year. And with the default budget, we are not doing that. So we're gonna maintain 16 bus routes. The cost savings will be in the $180,000 to $200,000 mark to stay at 16. We do get concerns from parents about overcrowded buses or about kids being on the bus for a long period of time. But at this point, we feel that that would be the area where we would look to get the majority of any type of default savings. If I could.
As long as there aren't fewer bus stops, I think that's fine. I definitely remember there being some walking distance to bus stops in our area, so that's, don't decrease the number of bus stops, but I guess you can have a longer bus route with more kids per bus, which sounds like what he's describing.
Just one, if I could continue. As many of you know, and for those of you who weren't part of the budget committee last year, there were certain things that were in the budget, such as Schoology, which is our learning management program, and Kaltura, which is the video component of delivering the curriculum for students. We have to put that in. It was grant funded. It has to be in there, so we have to take funds from other areas. Also, that Wonders reading curriculum, if you remember that, that was over about $100,000. Like, we have to buy that reading curriculum.
Note also, though, that if the default budget were larger, he wouldn't be needing to make these cuts from other line items, including school routes. So then the complaints from parents about, too many kids on a bus or too long of a bus ride home, which he says he has been getting, would go away. So that's a community need going unmet because the budget was not approved at a higher amount, probably.
So that's where the board made the decision, okay, we're not going to do these school buses, and that essentially is going to pay for the Wonders, and it's going to pay for Kaltura and Schoology, and then we're going to see how some other things shake out in terms of budget transfers. But those three things, they're mission critical to delivering education, and the bus route 19 to 16 is going to pay for that. And
Doug,
sorry.
you have a question?
Yeah.
Sorry, back on the other topic. I had some questions. Is it possible for you to actually try and give an estimate summary of the different line items where you think the energy savings are going to be, just to get a feel for that? I know you say not dollar for dollar, but I'd just like to see some level of comparison articulated if that's possible.
I have a report that the consultant gave us. Randy and I have not gone through that yet, but I will, as I have it here. And
I can't read that.
it's like, and it's in there as well. You probably can't read it, but,
Light reading.
Yeah.
but to give you, an example, right? Building automation, so this is your heating control systems. At Bartlett Elementary School, they're projecting that we would see about a $9,500 savings because of heating controls, and at Maple, about a $10,000 savings. So in heating, which Bartlett is heated by natural gas, Maple Avenue is by propane. So that's an example of kind of what they're projecting. If you're doing LED retrofits of the lighting in your schools, same thing. They're projecting. That's a lot of savings in a building like Goffstown High School. So Goffstown High School, they're projecting $150,000. Now, I haven't vetted this with them, and there's calculations behind
I
it.
guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see it in reference to the line items on the budget, which ones.
Oh, you'll see
apply
that. You'll
kind
see
of
that
thing.
in the notes. So when I prepare the budget
Okay.
over the summer and the fall,
just to get a
I'm
feel
gonna be putting in comments like reduction of electricity
Okay.
due to expected savings in X, But like I've been saying, now, I just want to say it for the fourth time, is that it won't be dollar for dollar.
Right.
Because I think we're 50,000 at least in low on electricity.
Thank you.
Frank?
If I hear you correctly, the question that keeps going through my head is, what is the alternative? We stay with the system we have right now, which is inefficient, use more fuel costs. Just at the view at 30,000 feet of this, the interest rate's fantastic. Where can I get it? You're getting the grants, the reduced fuel, the equipment. On its face, I don't see why we would even consider the alternative of not doing it.
And I think that's what the school board, felt as well. Just, if you recall, I mentioned to you, it's on your sheet, we replaced an HVAC unit on top of Mountain View Middle School, 60, it's on here, right? We used it for capital reserve fund. We would have been smarter, if we knew, it would have been part of this project, because we would have been able to get a rebate, or when you have an individual project, Eversource won't give you these rebates. When you see it as part of a building envelope project, it triggers it. Just like the insulation on the roof, that would not ordinarily trigger an incentive, but when you're doing other things within the building, more than one measure, Eversource gives you a greater incentive on it. So, and these incentives are not always there. So years ago, 3-4 years ago, we did all of our gymnasiums and we got like a 75% rebate through Eversource. Well, that was a one-timer. There was some federal or state grant and they were throwing money at it and we did it. But that went away. And then now, you're lucky to get a 25 or a 50% as opposed to the 75% that we got. So you have to try to seize the moment when they come around on these, because these programs, just like the ones that you might see as residents, like Energy Saves or other ones where you buy light bulbs and they only cost you $2 and they're really 20. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not there.
Was there, another question, please? Yeah. Was there any comparisons to the fire station downtown relative to the roofing and changes? It's one of the things from the tours last year, when we went to the fire station, they have some, I guess, pretty state-of-the-art energy efficient insulation, and I don't know how they did that, but it was pretty apparent when we were walking through there on a hot day, the difference between that fire station and the one over in Bernardville. Pretty significant. So
the answer is no. I know. I don't believe that this company, knows about the Goffstown, the fire station. But I will say that when we did talk about the insulation of that roof, we are putting in this state-of-the-art insulation. As Jared mentioned, our current insulation is partially wet, which poses a problem in and of itself. So that has to all get taken out, and then they are putting in a type of insulation that's really good.
I'd be interested. I don't know if I would encourage to talk to the folks downtown to see, check out the comparisons.
I appreciate that.
Maybe there's some merit to that.
Thank you.
Why?
The other one thing that I wanted to share with you with respect to transportation is that we're currently negotiating our transportation contract with our current provider. As I mentioned to the board, and we spoke to the board in both public and non-public. I can't share the non-public discussion, but I will share with you what I shared publicly. And that is, right now, there are only two players, large players, who provide student transportation in New Hampshire. Most of those two companies have bought out most of the smaller mom-pop type transportation companies. So for those of you who've been in Goffstown for a while, we refer to the bus company as Goffstown Truck Center. Well, Goffstown Truck Center was a family-owned business. That family-owned business was bought by STA, Student Transportation of America. Just like that business, so many other ones in New Hampshire experienced the same thing. So there's really only two. We could use the word monopoly. We could, may or may not. But what I have done is I have spoken with people who do my job in all of the southern New Hampshire to get what they're paying for their bus transportation. And that's how we're going to be negotiating with our provider. The cost of the bus drivers, we've been having struggles retaining bus drivers. They used to be like $16 to $18 an hour. They're over $24 an hour now. Surrounding communities like Hooksett are paying $28 an hour for a bus driver. So we're in this free market economy where soon it'll be 30. So we're trying to balance the needs of getting transportation for our kids and paying a fair price. And I think we're in a spot where we will.
Interesting. So when things started to monopolize a little bit and there started to be only two companies providing, the price went up, or is he saying the price is going up due to labor cost increases that are unrelated? Seems like he's blaming the monopoly for the price raise.
We'll get a fair price, but the price is going way up. That's all I'm going to say. We had a 5-year contract before. It was a sweetheart deal, and the sweetheart deal is no more. So we're going to pay the piper. Now, that being the case, the cost of the bus runs are going to go up pretty high, but we're not going to have as many of the bus runs, so it'll kind of balance out a little bit, but it's not perfect either. So, and that's not just here. It is everywhere. Student transportation is skyrocketing. So just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Any other questions with Scott?
I learned something.
And as always, if you do have any questions, shoot me an email and I share this with you. Like, if I can answer a question for you in a few minutes, and I know Brian and I talk, et cetera, like, I'm going to give you that. If you're going to ask me if that's going to take me an hour, I push back a little, like, Brian, talk to Joe. I ain't doing it. Just be mindful of that. If it's something pretty quick, I will definitely do it for you. If it requires more, like an hour or two worth of work, then I'm hoping that it's this committee's vote that you want me to do something, and we've had a good relationship with that. So,
thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Jared, anything else to add?
Just one item. Our new principal at the Maple did say if any budget committee member wants to attend the school while it's in session, because as we know, school in session is completely different than outside, please contact him. Bill would love to be able to walk people through from the budget committee to see the school in action as it's there, because as we know at Maple, we have facility needs problems. We are over capacity based on our standards, and if you want to see that in action, again, you can just reach out to Bill and he'll set something up with you.
Awesome. Kelly, do you have an update for us?
Sure. I don't have a Scotland update, but I will do my best. So since the election, the select board has been working on making those initial decreases to the budget to make up that $1.4-ish million budgeting shortfall, while also trying to calculate this year's increases and figuring out how to manage all that. So we approved the 2024 road plan.
Kelly, can you speak up a little bit? I'm sorry. We can't hear you down here. Can you speak up a little bit?
Oh, sorry. Yep. We approved the 2024 road plan, which saw significant cuts. We're evaluating services right now overall, but we're trying to figure out how to manage reductions from this year versus scheduled things and planned things for next year. So, we're always trying to make sure that we're not impacting residents, but we'll see things as they evolve. Our finance team just met their 30-day deadline to reallocate the proposed budget to match default, so we just received that update. So thank you and good job to Danielle and her team on making that happen, because it's an awful lot of work after 8 months of budgeting changes to go back. And then as we keep making adjustments to maintenance schedules, road plans, things like that, I'll keep you guys updated. But like I said, compacting this year's reductions versus next year's is going to make for an interesting budget year and CIP planning process for all of us. As far as staff is concerned, I just want to share that Danielle is officially going to maintain her assistant town administrator title, but has moved also into the human resources director for the town, which is very exciting. She'll still be the liaison for this committee, but she'll be starting that new role, which means that we have a new finance director, Zach Hoffland, who moved from the town accountant role into the finance director role and treasurer. So you'll probably see him around, but he's been on the team and doing a great job. And that leaves his position for town accountant currently open. And we posted that job already, yes. And for GTV, for the PEG Access Coordinator, we just brought on Jennifer Pappas. We do have an opening for a PEG Education Tech. And other town hall job openings, we have an IT help desk tech position that's opened. We have a full-time building and health inspector position and a part-time building secretary. That's an open position right now as well.
The IT help desk is going to be starting on the 29th of...
Oh, wonderful. One less. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions for Kelly?
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Kelly. All right, so the last things I have on the agenda is approval of minutes. So does everyone have a list of absent or not on the committee? Yes, I do. Okay, so we have a quorum, so we're allowed to approve the minutes even if a quorum of the people at the meeting previously were not there. So Danielle is...
Quorum is just a term for the number of people necessary to approve a given government action. So, obviously, if there's a council of 15 people and 12 of them called out sick today, the 3 that remain can't just approve an action. They need to have, 10 out of 15 or some other number out of 15, and that number is called a quorum.
For us, written down the members who weren't present during that meeting. So we have to approve 4 sets of minutes. So I'll entertain a motion for December 5th. Brian?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve minutes on December 5th, 2023.
Second.
Moved by Brian. What?
I have a note, we already approved those minutes with changes, and these minutes looked like the old minutes without the changes.
I'll check after on that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we can put that off, the December 5th
Yeah.
and December
Just that one in
19th?
particular?
Just that one.
Oh, okay.
That's the only one I found.
Okay, thank you. So we'll put that off,
So I'll make a motion
December 19th.
to December 19th,
Okay.
approve that minutes without corrections.
Okay, motion by Brian to approve, second by Laura. Discussion, seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed, abstentions? Elizabeth DeBrule, Peter Gregorakakis, Izquierdo, and Kelly Boyer abstain. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for January 11th, 2024, public hearing.
Moved by Brian Mazer to approve, second by Allison DeCesare. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as written? Those opposed? Abstentions? Elizabeth DeBrule, Peter Gregorakakis, Richard Fletcher, Kelly Boyer, and Izquierdo abstain.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to wrap it up.
Wonderful.
I'd like to make a motion to approve minutes from February 5th, 2024, post-deliberative session.
Okay, moved by Brian Mazer, second by Laura Stevens. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Abstentions? Elizabeth DeBrule, Richard Fletcher, Peter Gregorakakis, Kelly Boyer, and Izquierdo abstain. So with that, I was...
wonder if they just abstain when they feel neutral towards it. That, I mean, I don't know.
Hoping to have another meeting in the next couple months or so, maybe a June meeting, and then we're going to head into facility tours. As always, if you see, like, based on what's been spent in the budget lines, it's kind of our responsibility to keep an eye on that. I can have a separate meeting if you decide that we need to talk about certain spending or revenue's not coming in or something like that. Please, like, reach out to me. We can schedule a meeting. I typically keep an eye on these things, make sure we're spending up in the line. So. How does the committee feel about doing like a meeting in June? Mid-June? Okay. And then we'll talk in mid-June, we'll look at spending, and then we'll talk facility tours for the school in town. Typically, I love the tours because it gave us an opportunity as a committee to meet throughout the summer, late summer, and then we've had the opportunity to look at where the needs are in the community and see them firsthand. So with that, I'll probably do something mid-June. Probably something mid-June. Danielle, do you mind talking about?
Tours are always good. I can't imagine anybody being against the people in our government having more hands-on knowledge of the institutions that they're governing over.
About 2 training opportunities, if you don't mind.
So very briefly, you see before you that there are 2 upcoming training opportunities. One of them is a save the date for the New Hampshire Municipal Association's annual budget and finance workshop. The budget committee members do have money in the town budget under the budget committee expense line for attending that meeting. And so if anyone is interested, when registration opens, we'll let you know. You can let us know. It's usually a full day event at the Dairy Field in Manchester. And the date, at the time, we thought it was to be determined, but they actually did just post the date. It's September 10th.
The New Hampshire Municipal Association that she's talking about actually writes some very interesting articles about, municipal finances, which I'm now realizing are maybe only interesting to me.
This year. So save the date for that. The GOFFSTOWN budget orientation, that's usually an in-house one that Scott and I put on together. It reviews all of the reports that you look over, explains what our GL structure is so you understand how the account numbers represent the different departments or segments. And we usually do that in August, but we'll coordinate with the chair and the committee. So we'll probably have more information at the June meeting about timeline or when that'll be.
It actually, thinking about it, might be helpful if we do it during the June meeting.
Yeah.
So we can look at the reports that we have and be able to look at those then. And it's a good refresher for all of us anyway. Mm-hmm. So we'll probably do a quick, if Scott, you'll be prepared for that, right? June? Yeah. All right, that sounds good. Okay.
Well, we picked the date for the meeting.
We'll probably do it around June. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, is there any other business to come before the board? Peter?
I'm sorry, were you saying that you wanted to do it at the same time that we meet, or you're saying you want to offer that prior to our June meeting?
We probably will make it like a part of the meeting to do a quick orientation. That's what we did in the years past. I mean, if there are members that, we don't have to formally meet, but if we have a quorum, we'll call the meeting. But if there's, I might notice a orientation and then half hour later jump into the business of the meeting. So members, if they don't want to go, they don't have to, but if they do and we reach a quorum, then we'll call a meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, Elizabeth?
So when are we going to talk about some of the things that seem to get missed when we're in the heat of the budget season? Like revenues, like debt servicing, like the unreserved fund balance. I guess I'm worried about the big picture getting lost in the details of the line items. So has this committee, when I was on it, we usually did it, sometimes we did it in May, sometimes we did it in September. What has this committee's practice been in the last few years, and when are we going to have those discussions?
Well, I think we typically had the orientation where we kind of had the idea of like budget items and stuff, but coming down the pipeline, I think CIP and that kind of thing comes up later in the summer. So, yeah, go ahead.
So revenues are talked about during the initial, not only the initial school presentation, the combined one, but then in the subsequent one as well. I give the school board and the budget committee the projected revenues that we're expecting. Part of those is use of fund balance
This is a good thing to watch
taxes
right
the
before-
following year. How that is tracking. And for those of you who don't know, that is derived from an underspend of the budget and an over collection of estimated revenues. But that is talked about because, again, if you are looking at from the perspective of net tax impact, right, then you should be looking at revenues. And, you know, interestingly, Danielle and I were talking yesterday, and there are a handful of bills in the legislature, in the House and the Senate, that could have a very positive impact on revenues for Goffstown, to the point where it could be over $1 million or more, because one of them is adequacy related for education, the other one is retirement, 7.5%. That's big money.
Yeah, both of those passed the House last week.
Right.
So
if it were to pass the Senate and then it's signed by the governor, you would, so we go through this whole, for lack of a better term, sausage grinder, looking at budgets, and in one fell swoop, no disrespect, but boom, we could add $1.5 million or more, which would have, I don't know if people would have voted differently if they knew that their taxes would have been less, so these things happen. So that's why we are always super careful when we talk about revenues, because we don't know where they're going to ultimately land. It's an estimate. So we can talk about it, but just know that they're unpredictable. And whether that's meals and rooms taxes or other things on the town side, they're tricky, for whatever that's worth.
I gotta say that it makes me really respect the difficulty of the project of governance and of what they're doing when he says things like, a lot of this approval process happens at orientation, so that time has already passed, and then we'll get to talk about that later with the capital improvement project. And then this guy jumps in and says, well, there's stuff that could add $1.4 million to the budget. So we're not really sure, not $1.4 million to the budget, $1.4 million of revenue, I believe he said. So we're not always sure exactly what the amounts of money we are dealing with. And I think that's kind of the weird thing about this whole process, is that it seems to be an ongoing and conversational process, because the floor is just shifting under them, every 10 feet that they're walking, the floor is just shifting.
And we get revenue reports monthly as well.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of have an idea of that. Jared, did you want to bring up?
No, that's not mine.
Okay. Okay, we'll leave that to another meeting. All right. Is there any other discussion?
Sorry, can we also get at
Yes.
this orientation kind of update on the capital reserve funds in general?
Yes.
I mean, who can expend from them? How? Okay, that's all going to be covered. Okay. Okay, that's good.
Joe did a fantastic, I don't know if you've been paying attention.
I don't know if that woman is, a conservative or what have you, and that might be why she's asking more suspicious questions towards the budget process or the capital reserve fund. But I do appreciate, for my sake as a layman, that she is asking those questions, because every question she's asked so far is a question that I also have, just as an inexperienced person in government, you know. So they're coming in handy. Those questions she's asking is what I'm saying. I'm glad there's that level of accountability. I think that what you might call like fiscal responsibility or fiscal accountability obviously means different things to left partisans than it does to right partisans, but it's very important as in the abstract at least.
But we do this stuff. I don't know if you did it back then, but.
Funny, but yeah. We didn't have very many capital reserve funds back then, believe it or not. I don't think there was many.
I think we have the same number with.
Really? I don't think so.
No, too,
We didn't have the ambulance thing.
That's a revolving fund, but a little bit different.
Parks and Rec was a new revolving fund back in the day. They did not have a revolving fund initially when I got on. There were changes.
We didn't have school back when you were on, did we? Remembering correctly, 'cause I think I was there.
Oh shit, shots fired.
Out of the minute, strike that.
Olivia, you should back up.
Okay, so at this point, I'll entertain motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to.
Motion by Olivia, second by Frank. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're unanimous. Okay, thank you, everyone.
And now I'm allowed to sleep. The person who has imprisoned me here and forced me to watch this meeting said that when I'm done, I'm allowed to sleep.